Carolina Storyteller tells stories that may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Stay spooky, my friends.
Hello, folks, and welcome back to the Carolina Storyteller on the first episode for July of 2024. That's right, we're all the way into July. Just so you guys know, quick reminder, you can get a whole bunch of extra special stuff just by going over to patreon.com/Carolina Storyteller and get early access to episodes, behind the scenes stuff. We've got all kinds of stuff from my new project that's going to be coming out in December called Valmont, the Black Raven Chronicles. And that's going to be very exciting. I've got a great cast going into that. But you're not here for all of that right now. You're here for the spookiest of stories and the creepiest of haunts. And I've got a great one for you. Bridges are very interesting things. And we're going to be talking about a bridge today. There are lots of ghost stories that surround the bridges, and there are lots of stories that are similar to every bridge. The bridge that we're going to be talking about today is the Crybaby Bridge of Anderson, South Carolina. Now, this bridge has got a very interesting history because before it was in Anderson, it was actually constructed in one piece in Virginia and taken all the way down to Charleston, South Carolina, back in 1919. And it served in Charleston for a good 30-40 years until 1952, when the bridge was taken and placed in Anderson County around, I believe it was called the Rocky River, along High Shoals Road. Now, this bridge was used to ford the river, and it was in service until 1987. But our story doesn't take place in 1987. It takes place in 1959. The story goes that in the winter of 1959, a young mother was rushing home to meet her husband. She had the child in the car with her, and it was storming, and she was speeding. And as she came upon the Rocky River Bridge, she lost control and went into the river. Her and her child were thrown from the vehicle. And she began to frantically search in the rain and the darkness, looking for her child with no source of light. And she could hear her child crying consistently. But she couldn't find the child everywhere. She searched and searched and searched, and then suddenly, the crying just stopped. And the mother dropped dead on the spot. Just like that. Now, eventually someone came along and they were able to find the body of the mother, but never found the body of the child. Now, they know the child was with the mother when the mother left where she was, but the child was never found again. The body presumably washed away in the river as the rains came down. It was a couple of years later when a couple was traveling by the bridge, and they could swear they heard the faint sounds of a baby crying. This was the first instance of the Crybaby Bridge being recorded. They got out and began to search for the sound, and when the sound went away, they then heard feet splashing in the water, and suddenly this earth-shattering wail of pain from a young woman, and then everything went still and quiet. They called for the police, they searched the area, nothing was ever found. After that, a group of high school boys, out in the middle of the night in the 70s, claimed to see the woman walking up and down the riverbanks, searching for her child. She was never found when they went to try and help her. They looked around for hours trying to figure out where this woman that they had seen was, and eventually went to the sheriff. By this time, the sheriff kind of knew the story a bit and explained to the boys what had happened. And explained to them that they had not seen a live woman, but had seen the ghost of the woman who lost her child. Events like this would happen throughout the 70s and 80s and 90s. In 1987, the bridge was closed to the public. A new bridge was built, but it still stands there all the way to today. And to this day, people who go out to the Crybaby Bridge claim to either hear the cries of a woman calling out for her child or the soft cries of an infant. And they say that when the crying stops, everything goes still. The insects quit making noise, the birds stop calling, the wind stops, and it becomes still and silent for about 10 minutes. Now, people are discouraged from going out to the Crybaby Bridge, of course. It's sat abandoned for, 87 was what? 37 years ago? So it's been almost 40 years since the last car traveled down that bridge. But some people still travel to the Crybaby Bridge at night just to see if they can witness this phenomenon. And all who go there claim the same thing: to hear the sounds of crying faintly, and then for everything to go still and silent and eerie. They never want to go back there again. And that is the story of the Crybaby Bridge. Now, what's interesting about this bridge is that it's got a couple of other legends associated with it. There is a saying that there is a gentleman who was working on the construction of the bridge that fell to his death, and his ghost is said to haunt the actual riggings above the bridge. There are some who claim that it was his ghost that caused the woman to swerve that night that led to her untimely demise and the loss of her child. There are others who claim that the woman purposely threw the baby into the water and then killed herself once she heard its cries stop. Crybaby bridges are common all over the country. Every state just about has a Crybaby Bridge, but all the stories are unique and different. And though there are some who claim that this was an act of murder-suicide, the reports are that this mother did not indeed intend to hurt her child when she went out there and back. The story is that her husband had just come home from the war. Well, not the war, but from the military. And she was wanting to get home so that she could have the house ready for him when he arrived the next day. She had been off with family that day, preparing for a celebration. And she was going to put the child to bed and get the house ready so that when he arrived in the morning, he would have a proper welcome. When he arrived in the morning instead, he found out that his wife and child were both deceased, which is probably the worst thing you can come home to that I could imagine. And that's our story for today, folks. I hope that it wasn't too depressing. If you ever get out to Anderson County, I don't necessarily recommend heading down to the Rocky River and looking for where the old bridge sits along High Shoals Road. But if you do go out there, and you should hear the sound of a baby or a woman crying, just remember that the crying will eventually stop. Of course, so will everything else. So, that's the story for today, folks. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. It's a short one, not a long one. I know, but it's a really good and creepy one, and that's why I like it. I really like these ones that are nice and creepy. And while I've never been to Anderson County myself to look for this bridge, I fully intend to one day, just to see what the actual bridge looks like in the light of day. I don't know if I'm going to go out there at night. That just doesn't fit my style anymore. But who knows? Maybe I will. I want to remind you guys again, you can support the podcast and find out more about Valmont by going to patreon.com/The Carolina Storyteller. Again, that's patreon.com/The Carolina Storyteller. Or if you want a lot of really good stuff, just go to thecarolinastoryteller.com. You can get links to the merch. You can check out every episode, find out about guests that I've had on the podcast, things that are going on, events that I might be going to. And beginning next week, I'm going to be doing stuff live. That's right. You will be able to go to Gig Salad and book The Carolina Storyteller, me, Jonathan Phoenix, to come to your event. You got a birthday party, you're going camping, you need somebody to come and tell you some scary stories. Maybe you guys need a workshop on learning how to do storytelling. I'm your guy. Go over to gigsalad.com, look up The Carolina Storyteller, hit me up, and we'll book something out. I'd be happy to come and tell stories to you in person. That's today's show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know it's a little short, but I think it's short but sweet. Remember, friends, stay spooky. We'll see you next time.